Okay, let's start over. First of all, hit and smash that like button, please. It really does help. You'll notice if you're looking at your feed, as we have, YouTube is not promoting our channel. In fact, they're not promoting Whitley's channel much either. It's called ghosting. But when you hit and smash that like button, it does send a message to them that you are watching and that you do want to see our show. I could see that many of you came in sort of halfway through Steven's story, and you really need to go back and watch it from the beginning because you missed the experience that he had, which even though I'm the person who did it, it moves me every time I watch it because I've been there and you've been there, and it's exasperating when you see something like that. And as Stephen well knows, you're just so alone with it because you can run in the house and say, well, I just saw this huge triangle over the house. And, you know, if it wasn't for Mary, we had some feedback going on in the background. You know, I couldn't just go in the house and tell my family. And with my previous marriage, my late wife, Jilly, it was always awful if I said I saw something like that. She just rolled her eyes, and it's very hard. It's very hard. Now, you know, Steve says at that one point at the end of the first clip that he sent me, I just felt like it was all a lie. Well, in a way it is. And what I mean by that, I think that all of you, if you listen to me and really think about what I'm about to say, I have a very strong memory, and it's become rather pronounced lately, of that first day I was truly conscious that I was in this body. I must have been 3 years old. It was San Francisco, 47th Avenue. It was late morning. I can see everything, and I have the sense of being able to see myself as well. And I'm just this little kid in this little body, suddenly realizing that they're conscious and alive. And I look down at my body, and it's impossible to put it in words how I felt, because up to that point, I was a non-speaking consciousness. And at 3 years old, language really isn't much better than it is today for describing things like that moment. Do you remember that moment? You need to go back and connect with it, because that's that moment when you realized and were self-aware of your consciousness and how miraculous it was to be alive again. And in this amazing reality with all these wonderful things all around you, birds in the sky and the sun and the clouds, and just, it was a world of wonder, and everything was new. And then the lies start. You know, people who are well-meaning, who were lied to as well, are going to tell you how reality works. And you just came from somewhere where reality doesn't work the way they tell you. And I think that's where my heart goes out to Stephen when he says, I just felt like it was all a lie. I really get that. So I found his whole account so moving, because, correct me if I'm wrong, Stephen, and we are going to have him on a live stream soon. Up to that point, you really haven't given this stuff much thought. A lot of us didn't. I mean, I was plagued with UFOs when I was a kid, and I just assumed that's how things were. And I saw them, and I was fascinated by them, and I didn't make the connection to years later. But a lot of people go through life never thinking about it, never seeing anything. And so one day you get in a fight with your girlfriend, you go out in your porch or whatever, the deck, to cool off. And You really have to laugh. I mean, this immense, incredible thing comes out of the sky. And right there at that moment, everything stops. And somehow inside, your mind knows the truth of it and how it relates to you, and even why you're seeing that at that very moment in time. Again, impossible to put into words. But Steve did a pretty good job. He did a really good job. And, this is what Breaking the Silence is all about. And I commend you, Steven, for coming forward the way you did and saying what you did. You saying, what do I care about? I don't care if people believe me or not. They think I'm nuts or not. I got to get this off my chest. And maybe it will help other people to feel comfortable with it too, and also talk about it, because then it becomes a movement. It becomes a protest, if you will, against those lies that reality is different than what you've been taught. And knowing and being in connection with that reality is very important to human evolution and how we move into the future. So I would love to have more of you send in your stories the way Steven did. Just record it if you're comfortable with it. No one's forcing you to do it, but if you wanted to and you think, well, geez, I can't get anyone to shoot any good camera work for me or any of that kind of stuff, don't worry about that. That's not what's important. What was important was Steven's story. It's really important. Because I know there's a bunch of you out there watching this show, watching this channel, that probably have had that same moment we just discussed that Steven had, and you're scared to death to talk about it. And I get that. You're afraid because people have been told a lie and you just saw through it. But if you do, know that you can just go sit in your car late at night or wherever you want, a closet, wherever you feel comfortable, and tell your story, and we will do with that story what you just saw. We'll bring it to life. We'll bring that moment to life that you had that was so moving. And the special effects were fine. They were good, and they even moved me because I've been there. But no matter how well you do effects or recreate something, it will never match what it's like at that moment. You're actually in that moment, in the presence of such an amazing thing, which always takes me back to the last time I saw a triangle, and that was with Whitley Strieber. I was on the phone with them, and I saw one very much like what Steve saw, except it didn't have the windows in it. Other than that, it was the same. And it was big and it was silent. And I didn't have any humming or sound, but I do know that happens. And when I see it in my mind right now, you kind of don't want that moment to end. Because here's something you can look at and say, my God, there is more than just going to work every day and notching out a living and going through life thinking that you're born, you raise kids, you work hard, you retire, and you die. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but there is so much more to your existence than that, your consciousness, who you are. And that's why I hope that some of you, when I was talking about it, actually thought back to that very first time you remember being alive. Because it's a really important point and topic in Whitley's new book, The Fourth Mind. I put a review of my feelings about the fourth mind in the community today and on the website and a few other places. And Whitley saw it and he wrote to me. And if I could find my phone, I could read to you what he said back. I'll be right back. I see it. They say never lose. Oh, that's interesting. I'm out of focus. Okay. So this really touched me. What he said to me about my review, because that book, God, just so moving, and so many people are asking me, why is this happening? What's its purpose? Why are they here? Why us? Where are they from? All that stuff. The whys of where they're from and how they got here and the mechanics of it all are probably they're the least most interesting part of this whole experience to me personally. Whitley wrote back, thank you for what you put on Substack, because that's where I put the review initially. This awe, and this is in quotes because it's what I wrote him, this awe of just being consciousness present in the little, being conscious, being alive in this little body, as I described, is something I have been very aware of lately. Whitley's saying how he talks about it in the book too, The Fourth Mind. Feeling very intently. I mean, he's thinking about it all the time. And I have been too. And I didn't even know that till I started reading, till I was reading The Fourth Mind. The review is gentle, beautifully stated effort to get people to look to something that is outside their lives and expectations. Thank you very much for it. Well, thank you, Whitley. You're more than welcome. I really, again, found it hard to put into words how I felt about the things I was reading in your book, because as always, and with all of his books, even before I knew him, I could relate so directly to what he was saying as though we were connected somehow. As it turns out, we are all connected, not only in this experience, but in all forms. We're connected to, I've talked about it a million times. We're connected to every rock, creature, bug, sky, clouds, oceans. We're connected to it all, but most importantly, we're connected to each other, and we feel each other and we sense each other. And it doesn't just stop here in this world. It extends far beyond it. I cannot recommend enough The Fourth Mind. Now, you've heard me talk about Simon Bound's book, which is over there where I can't reach it, about near-death experiences. And you've heard me talk about the telepathy tapes. Well, the telepathy tapes were something that Whitley has been promoting and trying to get people to listen to, because in so many ways they validate the experience of the visitors and also how the visitors as non-speakers actually sort of function and how they see things, as well as the near-death experiences connect with it as well. But I'm going to add a third one to that, and that is The Fourth Mind. Now, the beginning of the book goes into a lot of detail about the Greys' anatomy and their bodies and how they function and what they're made of, and the fact that they're probably designed. But it goes way beyond that when you get into the second part of the book. And it goes into that level that so many of us have been talking about. And yet at the same time, so many are resistant to. This experience is much, much more than a spacecraft that's capable of warping space and going from one distant star to another. It's so much more than the bodies that the visitors inhabit. It's so much more than the bodies we inhabit. And there's a really real definite relationship between the visitors and ourselves. And in some ways, we're both helping each other. But I don't want to talk about too much about what's in the book. I want you to read the book and see. because Whitley's been having these experiences for a very, very long time. We both have. You have. But over time, it's really evolved. And I'm not sure why there's so much resistance to that evolution. It seems to me that many people are still back in the 80s and 90s with this whole thing. So much of it is so personal that they feel violated and taken against their will, and they feel like they're losing their sense of self. And ironically, losing your sense of self is really part of this. And it's not a bad thing. But again, the people that fed us the lies, our people, I believe, are responsible for anyone's feeling that this goes against their will. Because we have been taught differently, and because we are, so many of us, not connected. We are disconnected, which is clear. All you have to do is watch the news, watch television, watch how our planet's suffering, watching how people are suffering, watch how people are starving to death in the richest country in the world, and so on and so forth. So for me, and many of us, this whole experience has really gone into a different level, and one which I'm happy to say I feel very good about. I'm very glad this has happened. I'm very glad I've had this experience. I'm glad I'm having this experience, and I'm glad I'm evolving with the experience, and I'm glad I'm learning the things about my consciousness, my soul, that I am learning. Because it's slowly but surely, it's not taking my ego away or my sense of self, but it's taking away the act of taking things personally when someone doesn't understand you. It's taking away the anger, which has so much clouded my judgment, my thought, and my focus. And I know it's done it for all of us. But because I've learned and come to terms with what my consciousness is, who I am, anger and fighting and wars and taking things personally and having your ego scorched just doesn't seem important anymore. It's just sort of isn't important. And it makes you feel good. It's different. You don't feel this sense of stress and oppression, even when there is stress and oppression going on all around you, and especially right now, not just in this country, but all over the entire world. Something's about to pop. It can't go on like this. And as people start discovering what Whitley and I have discovered, and others have discovered, I can see humanity calming down, losing their anger, and becoming much more focused on things that truly are important to who we are. And I got all of this, so much of it, by being validated. I think for the most part, you go back to that point when you were that little kid for the first time, you remember being in your body or taking your first steps and realizing you were alive, is that at that moment you were so innocent, everything was pure, everything was new. You hadn't been polluted yet by people trying to tell you how it is. And when you go back to that, knowing what you know now, and you get back in touch with that child, you look at things a lot different. And despite all the stuff going on, you just, it doesn't make you mad anymore. You just understand it. It may not be good, but you understand it. And just understanding something and not getting mad about something you can't do anything about makes a huge difference. So that's what I've been going through lately. It's not bad. It's been great. And it's just, it started kind of with the telepathy tapes, and after we finished them, and I wondered what it'd be like to go to the hill. Some of you will know what I'm talking about. And I had that brief moment where I was there and the kids saw me. Man, I can't tell you what that did to me, how it changed me, and so quickly, and just, I don't know if it changed me as much as I always was that being, that consciousness, but now I knew it was really okay to be that. And so I'm going to be, because of the programming, because of the lies that Steven spoke of. Technically we get brainwashed by our teachers and our parents and religious people and churches and everything under the sun. And in many cases, they're very good people and they're very well-meaning. But we haven't been getting correct information. And now I feel that we are. And again, this is strictly for entertainment purposes. And I'm not saying this is gospel and this is how it really is. But for me, I really learned that. So I babbled long enough. How is everyone? And did you enjoy Steven's show tonight? And are you looking forward to hearing him talk more about this on our live stream show? Because I know I am. Being 4 again and knowing what I know now. Yeah, I know. And that's something. Yeah, the funny thing about that, Mike, is that, we have this pretty healthy, being in the film business, I have a very healthy home theater, and I cut it on this this computer that I have especially for doing CGI and editing, all that. It's a studio type computer, and it's very, very fast and very powerful, and I have really good audio here. But I noticed on my system that the hum was more intense than it was when I edited. And even with headphones on, it all sounds the same. But something about the system, maybe I need to recalibrate it. But boy, that hum was powerful. If you're watching it on a home theater system, you may have noticed that. It was almost overpowering. But then again, that's how it was for Steven. So what's this? It's way more than entertainment. It's important validation. Yeah, well, you're very welcome, Susan. You've been certainly part of that. Yeah, well, George, as I was reading The Fourth Mind, I had to stop and tell Whitley that, it was so comforting to read, because Whitley's highly intelligent, very, very educated. He's a writer. He's a master with words. And with his knowledge, his extensive research and technical understanding of the sciences involved, he puts this subject matter into a context in the written word that makes one feel, as you put it, what was that, sane? I think it was. Like, yeah, you're not crazy. I mean, it's like reading a textbook. This is so, It's maybe not that way for everyone. And I know the materialist scientists, no matter what we show them, no matter what we do, and the telepathy tapes are certainly a good example of that, is that you will hand them concrete validation, concrete evidence, measured evidence that those kids have telepathy, and still they'll say no. No, I'm not going to listen to that. Kind of reminds me of somebody in the Supreme Court, but I'm not going to go there. You just dig their heels in and say no. And I guess it's always been that way. In years from now, they'll change their tune. I mean, it's hard when something changes their paradigm so much that they have to go back and rethink everything. And again, it's ego. The hell with the ego. It's very easy, I think, to say something only to find out you're wrong, or believe something only to find out later you're wrong, and look at the camera or the person's face in the eye and say, I was wrong. Repeat after me. I was wrong. You see how easy that is? It's okay to be wrong. It's okay that you don't know. It's okay that you can't explain something. And I know what Mary's thinking. Because of Voyager, that classic scene with Janeway walking down the corridor in Voyager and saying, don't try to explain temporal mechanics. It's enough that it works. And really, you reach a point sometimes with all of this, and you always reach a point sometimes with all of this where you have to say, well, it's really there. I can't explain it, and it's okay. It's enough that it works. And then you feel okay. So I would love to share with you the things that I'm synchronizing with in Whitley's book, The Fourth Mind. But that's like giving away spoilers from a movie. Really? If any book I've ever read explains why this might be happening, who they might be, and their relationship might be with us. And I say might because if I say this is the way it is, that's not right either. Because none of us know 100% for sure. However, in reading his book, as I've read with all his books, and one other one that comes to mind is The Communion Enigma, you read it and it's just like, oh my God, that's my exact thought. That's exactly the same thing they shared with me, and so on and so forth. You know this from reading Communion, but Communion was the beginning. And this book really has gone full circle. And if you've read all of his books, they all dovetail together pretty well. I have to admit, I haven't read them yet. I'm going to read that as soon as I finish. I got a few pages left of the book. I reviewed it before I finished it even because I was so moved by it. I know pretty much what's going to happen. So if that isn't a pretty good plug for his book, I was looking on Amazon and usually his books are 5-star and 4.5-star. And for some reason, this book wasn't as well received, but it really, it gets into pretty highbrow stuff. Maybe highbrow is not the word for it. It gets into stuff that blows your mind if you don't know it already. And I don't know if everyone's ready for it. That's why when I wrote the review, I sort of played on Philip Corso's words. It's a new world if we can take it. I changed that. It's a new consciousness if we can take it. And if you read the book, you'll know why I said that. It's absolutely amazing. And like I said, it's in synchronous with Simon's book. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go back and watch the live stream we did with Simon Bound on his new book and with the telepathy tapes, which are really important and significant. So let's see, maybe we need to start a book club. Not a bad idea, really. Okay, I'm going to look at some comments now. if you have any questions you'd like to ask about my babblings. And also wanted to say, well, lavender moon crystals, hello. Yeah, I did, Mike. Did I have a telepathic message so strong almost he passed out? Yes, that night before the show, the live stream, after I finished the number 10 of the telepathy tapes, and I somehow ended up briefly on the hill. That was nearly a pass out moment from emotion. That's the thing about this stuff. It's when Whitley wrote what he wrote to me in response to my review, it was very emotional. It was though I could feel his emotions, and I guess maybe I was, and my own emotions were so tender on this subject, and it can be such a high that you feel faint. I remember I thought the moon followed me. I think we all thought that. So, Steven, you're in here somewhere, right? You're being quiet. Steven's new to this community, but you sure came on with a bang. I mean, you did it, man. I mean, we talked for a while, and we had a nice telephone conversation, and you blew my mind with your delivery of your experience. And then you sent me the video, and I looked at it and I said, I can work with this. And so we're really glad to have you. Oh, Regine, I'm glad that you feel that way. Yes, you are here, Stephen. Thank you. Stephen is Let's Ride. That's Stephen, and then we just watched his story tonight. Yeah, normalizing it. You know, being around all of you, and I mean all of you here, Whitley, all the people I know all around the world and in the United States about this subject, it can feel pretty normal. But don't be mistaken. When you step outside of our box and you talk publicly among people who are not there, it's not so normal to them still. We have a lot of work to do. Oh, well, hi, Shelby. I have some thoughts on that because I've been right there. You've had this amazing experience. Now, Stephen doesn't know what happened with 6 hours of his time, and hopefully we'll get to talk about that on the live stream we do with him. He hasn't had hypnotic regression or anything else, but you do have missing time, Stephen, and I think you're very aware of that. Something happened, and you don't remember it. But whatever happened was exhilarating to you, was something so amazing that you didn't want to see it end. And I know that feeling, and there's just this emotion and this sadness, and I'm feeling even now as I talk about it, of when they leave. Because when you're in that moment with them, that's when you really know that the fantastic, incredible, amazing universe you witnessed for the first time when you became two and conscious in your little human body as a child was real. And to bring that back to you, it took being in the presence of another intelligence that brought you into its world. Though briefly you were there. And when it's gone, it's like, okay, now I have to go back to this world where everything that goes up must come down. Magic is just something that people do on stage. We have short lifespans, and so on and so forth. And I got to go back to work. Got to keep my family fed and all that stuff. And to be able to have that experience and incorporate it into your life and continue with your life on Earth can be done very successfully, and it doesn't take away from your life on Earth. It adds to it. And even if people don't believe you, or you can never talk about it, you carry it around with you. And that's a real joy. And don't you know that somewhere up the road, eventually, all humans are going to know this and live in that reality that we are not alone, and that the universe is teeming with life and beyond? Because it will. It will. Oh, Susan. Steven, Susan is, I don't know if you watched her Jackrabbit case video. If you haven't seen it, you need to go watch it. She had an incredible experience as well. And she didn't remember a lot of what happened either till later. And whatever was over her in the desert, when she was stopped on the road in front of a bunch of jackrabbits, was so big that the sky was black and the stars were gone. When just before that, she could see the moon and stars. It's a great one. You need to go watch. And I encourage all of you, if you haven't watched the films, the episodic episodes that we do that feature a new experiencer, close encounters, witness, whatever you want to call yourself, watch them, because if you feel alone with this stuff, you won't anymore. Robert Solis was talking about the needle they showed him and put in his groin. Juxtaposition with Stevens wanting him. Well, I had medical things done to me. I had things stuck in me, and I had surgery on my brain, my skull. Now, well, I don't know, Mary, if that was an implant, what happened with my skull. And I wish Roger was here. I really do. I miss Roger Lear. He was my buddy and my friend, and he was very privy to what happened to my head and the fact that they had drilled into my brain with this little device. And the next day he could see it, and he could see that there was fluid coming out of it. And the last thing he wanted me to do was go to a doctor. So he attended to it, even though he was a podiatrist. He's still a doctor. And he said, "You're going to be fine. Just let it heal." And but somebody screwed up. And it wasn't until I went under hypnosis I realized what really happened. And so my memory of it, I could remember. But from the perspective of someone with a lot of fear and less curiosity, you would have taken that as being something done against your will, or something that was bad, or how dare they do that to me. But from what I know, they did it because something was wrong. I had a tumor or something. I don't know what, but they did do that to save my life. And that wasn't the only time either. So, I mean, that's what, I don't know that 100% for sure, but that's what I was told. And the whole bit of being told, it's, we have a way of knowing what this consciousness is thinking. We have a way of knowing what they want us to think, and we articulate it in language, but they're really not communicating in that way. And when I go back and I think about that moment, I'm on that table and they're putting that device on my head, I could feel their feelings, and they were concerned. And it's pretty hard for them in a telepathic state to hide their feelings or mine from them. So, Mike, you know, you can look at something as being terrifying and they're sticking a needle up inside of you or something like that, but there probably is a real purpose behind it. And there's a real problem with us being able to communicate with them. Again, I don't want to go into too much detail because I want you to read The Fourth Mind. Whitley explains it so well, and I concur with it. But we're trying to communicate with an entirely different, I don't want to use the word species, but we all have consciousness, but we're all a little different. And these beings are non-speaking, and trying to communicate is hard for them and hard for us. So it's too easy to misinterpret what's actually happening to us. You remember, I woke up, I was paralyzed, couldn't move, I was floated out to the window, I went up to the ship, they stuck things in me and put me back. And this has been going on for years. You're still here, you're still healthy, and you're still well. Once you get past the violation of self and the concept that, you know, I have to be very careful of my wording. It's that whole ego thing. And I don't think that any of the things they've been doing, at least in my case or Whitley's, has been done to harm us. I think it's quite the opposite. I think it's been done to raise our vibration and our consciousness, to raise the ability for us to communicate with them, to raise the ability for them to understand us and us to understand them. And that can be a very hard thing to do. And it can be very trying, to put it lightly, even painful. But any experience like learning to communicate with another species or another intelligence, non-human intelligence, will be the hardest thing that you'll ever do. And not just for you, but for them as well. So, do we really need to what? Well, George, like I said, just take the time and read The Fourth Mind. It may answer you. You know, we've, as a consciousness and living in these bodies, we've been brought up in a very linear way. And nothing about our consciousness is linear. But what is the purpose of that if we can't talk about it to anyone? You know, Lavender, we have to start somewhere. You know, because the more we push, like what I'm doing here and Breaking the Silence, and Whitley's doing with his book, and Danny Sheehan's doing out there with his whole movement, the new paradigm, the whistleblowers coming forward, all of the people have the experiences coming forward, is that we're pushing this thing, and we're being honest about it, and we're being real about it, and we're getting people who we couldn't talk to about it to listen a little bit more and more every day, to a point where they will listen. And that's how it has to go. You know, because people are just, like I said, they're living, it was like Steve said, it's all a lie. They think they don't have time to even think about stuff like this. They're so busy just trying to put food on the table and work, and everybody's telling them what to do and make decisions for them. And, you know, what goes up must come down, and all of that. It's a paradigm, and it has to be broken. We have to understand that we're connected to all life, all nature, the universe. Just the fact that we're born of star material, as Carl Sagan said, we are all star stuff. You know, he was a wonderful guy. He was right. We're all star stuff. We were born out of stellar material. I mean, think about that for a minute. Do you think that my neighbor across the way right now, working on his wife's car, I doubt he's ever thought about that. He's a hard-working stiff. He's trying to get to work every day and keep the roof over his head and stuff. Predominantly, we're all raised that way, and we're told not to think about such things. So, but I guarantee you, I'm getting to know him well enough at this point where I probably could talk to him about this stuff and say, well, have you ever considered this? Or you ever looked at the stars and thought, what the hell's out there? And maybe spend a little more time looking at them now again and having that thought, because it's a beginning. And then you can talk to people about this. The point is that you have to start somewhere. Don't think. I'm reading Susan right now. Also believe we do get collateral damage. That also becomes an important part of the experience. It is. Yeah, sure. Absolutely. God, I mean, I'd have to ask, what's the purpose of life if all you do is are born, work, and die? You know, I mean, when I was a kid, you know, I spent so much time looking at the sky at night and looking at telescopes and wanting telescopes and trying to build my own. And it just, everything was space and stars and science fiction and people thought I was weird for that. They did. Not my family, because my family was full of scientists and artists and brilliant people, and they didn't think I was weird at all. They just, you know, and to be frank, most of them were involved in this as well. They just didn't talk about it. If they did, they didn't talk about it in front of me. But I found out years later from my mother that it definitely ran in the family and that she had the experiences herself. It was 2 years before she passed away. But everyone else around me, you know, most kids were fascinated with sports, in Little League and football teams and all that stuff. And I just had no interest in that. And that wasn't the norm. And so you kind of stood out and people thought you were weird. And I was lucky to find the few friends I did that I felt comfortable with who also had an interest in science and stars and astrophysics and going to the moon and all that stuff. So I know that all of you here must have gone through that. And, you know, that's part of who we are. It's part of why this is happening to us. But I don't know that Steven, did you have a fascination with the stars previous to all this? Growing up as a kid, did you have a feeling that something wasn't right about this existence and there was something more? Always. So it was always there with you. How about your family and friends and people you knew during that time? Were they there with you? Or maybe you didn't know because they didn't talk about it. Lavender, your mom didn't have any interest at all. Well, my mom behaved the same way. Misfit, okay. My mom behaved the same way. She pretended she didn't know anything I was talking about. There were so many occasions where I saw UFOs and things happen, and she just swept it under the carpet. And it wasn't until later on near where she was going to pass away that I found out that she had seen me on television, as she put it, with that Whitley Strieber. And I went, oh boy. Okay, Mom. No. She said to me, it's not what you think. And then she opened up. And that was a rough moment. I see it's 4:30. We're just about there. That was a very rough moment for me because up until that point, I had been through communion and working with the Von Smith and all the regressions and everything. And there was this little tiny part of me that was holding out that maybe this was all BS until my mother spilled her guts to me. And it took my breath away because she validated my experience by having her own. And I realized at that point that it was real, that any chance of my thinking maybe it was just part of being crazy or something like that was gone forever. Oh, George, thank you. You're so sweet. Thank you. Thank you very much. That was a hell of a moment. So maybe Lavender, maybe that's still in store for you. And if your mom's still here, I don't know that she is, or if she isn't, maybe she's with you right now, and maybe you guys will have a conversation, because what I know now is that I've always known it, but what I really feel is true is that we never lose the people we love, and we'll be with them again, or can be with them again, or have conversations with them, because don't think for a moment that your dreams are just dreams. In closing, I will tell you that when you're in the Delta state, as those children pointed out that are non-speakers, autistic, telepathy and the telepathy tapes, when you're in the Delta, your body is the most asleep it's ever going to be. And at that point in time, it has the least amount of hold on your consciousness, your soul, your spirit, whatever you want to call it. And this is the point when you can leave your body. And I know for sure, for me, okay, that I have had many experiences in my dreams that were real. It was the result of consciousness I was interacting with, even people who had passed on that are still there. And I'll tell you just this one. I told this to Mary the other day. It came back to me. I remembered it, and I had never forgot it, but I hadn't thought about it for a while. During this whole space shuttle period, 1980, when Columbia went up and I went out to the desert and watched it land and all that stuff, I was so wanting to go. I wanted to figure out some way I could get on that shuttle and take a ride on it. And everyone said you wouldn't have the guts. And even my late wife said, oh, I bet you if you were given that opportunity, you'd be scared to death to do it. And so I go to sleep. I wake up. I get a letter that I was approved to go on the space shuttle. It was so real. It was so real, this dream. And it lasted for months, the dream. And I went through training and everything. And all through training, everything, I was like, yeah, I can do this. I can do this. And then it got to be the day that they suited me up and they started wheeling me out to go up the gantry and be put in the shuttle. And at that point, I remember thinking, what the hell am I doing? This is the most frightening thing I've ever done in my whole life. And I looked back over my shoulder and I said, but I have to do it. I can't back down now. And they suited me up. They put me in the seat. The seat was behind the command seats in the back. There's 2 seats behind the 3 seats in the front. And I remember when that thing lit up, the feeling of it, it was incredible. I was so exhilarated. All the fear went away. And I remember being up in space and floating and looking down at the earth. And then I woke up and literally I was gasping for air. I was so taken by that experience. And it's not the only time that that's happened to me in my dreams. I dreamed a whole lifetime one time. Born, lived, died, woke up the way Steven felt when that craft left him. Sad. But I got on that shuttle. And maybe that's something that somebody wanted to know, if I would really do that. Did I really have the right stuff, for lack of a better reason? So never pay attention to your dreams. Pay attention to the synchronicities, because synchronicities are really something more. I want to thank you for all the support, all the love, and I'm so glad you enjoyed Steven's show. We both worked really hard on it, and it's one of my favorites. And it was really something. It really was. We will see you Friday. And who are we having on Friday, Mary? Hold on. Just schedule. She has booked us all the way through May. We're having Yvonne Smith back, Terry Lovelace. In 3 weeks, we have the next communion letter, The Visitors in the Trees, which I'm really working hard on right now. It's going to be very epic. Do we have our guest for? His name is Paul. That's this Friday? Paul Vicciette. He's written several books about disclosure, and but not the kind of disclosure exactly you're thinking about. I think he's had
and our Zoom meeting
more contact.
Our Zoom meeting is the next day at 10 a.m.
And the next day at 10 a.m. is our Zoom meeting for anyone wanting to participate in that. And keep in mind, this is like a sort of a support group. You are not being recorded, and the public's not privy to it. You're on Zoom, it is private, and everything that happens there stays in there. So if you are shy about this subject, but you want to talk with people who've had these experiences, and even Whitley shows up from time to time, who knows, please feel free to contact us, and we send the link out. I think I've covered all the bases. Again, I'm working right now on the communion letters, Visitors in the Trees. Many of you requested that one, and what a handful it's been. I've had to create all these characters, the house on the hill, the tree with the platform in it, the communion lady wearing the green outfit with the pilot's cap that she was wearing and goggles, all of it. I've as accurately brought back visually what's described in that letter to the best of my ability. Tomorrow we're going to be filming Mary, reading it. You're going to see her on camera. We have a lovely intro I'm working on for it. So it's really, we're going up a few bars on the production value, but always staying true to what Breaking the Science is all about. And we'll see you again soon. Thank you all. Good night.